Let me tell you about a man I know. He met a woman. She was smart, attractive, successful, and she seemed ready for something real. She talked about wanting commitment, about wanting to build something, about being tired of games. Everything she said sounded like exactly what he was looking for. So he invested. He made space in HIS life. He introduced her to his friends. He made plans. He showed up the way a good man shows up when he thinks he has found someone worth building with. 6 months in, something changed. She started pulling back. Not all at once. Slowly. Little by little. The warmth cooled. The communication dropped off. And when he asked what was wrong, she said words he will never forget. I thought I was ready, but I am not. I need space. I need time. I need to figure myself out. And just like that, 6 months of his life disappeared. Not because she lied, not because she was a bad person, but because she had not done the work to heal from what came before him. And he missed IT. He missed all the signs. Because he wanted IT to work sulfur monoxide badly that he stopped seeing what was actually there. That is the feeling I want to talk about today. Because if you have been in the dating world for any amount of time, you know this feeling. You have felt IT. The feeling of investing in someone who looked ready but was not, who said the right words but could not back them up with action, who genuinely believed they were healed but were still carrying wounds they had not even looked at yet. And the question is not whether this happens. The question is, how do you see IT before it costs you 6 months of your life? How do you recognize the difference between someone who has done the work and someone who is just good at performing healing? That is what this video is about. And I'm going to show you exactly what to look for. This is male psyche. And we are going deeper than anyone else will go. The problem, why we miss the signs. Here's the first thing you need to understand. People are not lying when they say they are ready. Most of them genuinely believe it. They believe they have moved on. They believe they have healed. They believe the past is the past. And they are wrong. Carl Jung wrote about this over 100 years ago. He said that the parts of ourselves we refuse to look at do not disappear. They go into what he called the shadow, the unconscious, the hidden parts of the psyche that we do not acknowledge but that control our behavior anyway. And here is the key insight. When someone has been through a difficult relationship, a painful breakup, a divorce, or any kind of romantic trauma, they have 2 choices. They can look at IT, process IT, understand what happened and why, learn the lessons, integrate the experience, do the real work of healing, or they can bury it, tell themselves they are fine, move on quickly, jump into the next relationship before the last one has even finished processing, and hope that the new person, the new situation, the new feeling will be enough to cover the old wound. Most people choose the second option, not because they are bad, but because real healing is hard. Real healing requires you to look at your own part and what went wrong, to admit where you made mistakes, to see your patterns, to change. And that is painful. That is uncomfortable. That is work most people are not willing to do. Unresolved trauma does not stay in the past. IT recreates itself over and over in every new relationship until it is finally FACED, So here is what happens. Someone who has not done the healing work meets you. They are attracted to you. They feel something real. And they genuinely believe this time will be different. This time they are ready. This time they will not repeat the same patterns. This time they have learned, but they have not. Because awareness is not healing. Wanting to be different is not the same as doing the work to be different. The three biases that blind you. Let me explain why smart men miss this. Why good men waste months or years on people who are never actually available. IT comes down to three psychological biases that shut down your ability to see what is right in front of you. The first is attraction bias. When you are attracted to someone, your brain literally changes how IT processes information about them. You start looking for evidence that confirms they are great, and you ignore evidence that suggests they are not. This is not conscious. This is your brain protecting the good feeling, because good feelings are rare, and losing them hurts. When we fall in love, we do not fall in love with a person. We fall in love with a projection, an image we create in our own mind of who they are. The second bias is what I call the savior complex, especially common in men who build things, men who fix problems, men who take pride in being strong and capable. You meet someone who has been hurt, who has been through something difficult, who is a little broken, a little lost. And instead of seeing that as a warning sign, you see IT as an opportunity. You think I can be the one who helps her heal? I can show her what a good relationship looks like. And that fantasy is so appealing that IT blinds you to a simple truth. You cannot heal another adult human being. You can walk with them. You can support them. But the work has to be theirs. And if they've not already started doing that work before you met them, they will not start just because you are a good man. People do not change because someone loves them. People change when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of changing. The third bias is willful blindness. This is when you see the red flags. You feel the pattern. You notice the inconsistency, but you choose not to act on what you know, because acting on it would mean walking away from something you want. It would mean being alone again. IT would mean admitting you were wrong about them, and those things are painful. So you tell yourself stories. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You focus on the good moments and minimize the warning signs. You tell yourself you are being patient, understanding, mature. But N-E-C-C or L. Machiavelli would call that something else. He would call IT a failure of due diligence. Machiavelli wrote that the wise person does not hope for the best in others. They observe behavior under pressure, under stress, under inconvenience, and they make decisions based on what people do, not what they say. The framework, the 4 signs. So here's what I want to give you today. A framework, 4 specific signs that tell you whether someone has done the work to heal from their past or whether they are carrying unresolved trauma into your relationship. These are not surface-level red flags. These are deep psychological patterns that show up in behavior, in language, in how someone relates to their past. And once you learn to see them, you will never unsee them. I call this the 4 context test. 4 areas where the past either shows up as healed integration or as unprocessed shadow material. Sign number 1. How they talk about their ex. Sign number 2. How they handle conflict with you. Sign number 3. How they respond to vulnerability. Sign number 4. How they relate to time and commitment. Until you make the unconscious conscious, IT will direct your life, and you will call IT fate. So this is not about avoiding people who have been through difficult relationships. This is about recognizing the difference between someone who has done the work and someone who is still in the middle of it. Because if someone is still in the middle of healing, they are not available for a real relationship. Nitrogen monoxide matter how much they want to be. Nitrogen monoxide matter how much you want them to be. In the next segment, I am going to walk you through sign number 1 and sign number 2 in detail. I am going to show you exactly what to listen for, what questions to ask, what language patterns reveal healing versus what language patterns reveal unprocessed trauma. Stay with me, because what comes next will change how you evaluate every person you meet from this point forward. This is male psyche, and we are just getting started. Sign number 1, how they talk about their ex. The first sign is the most revealing, and most people completely miss IT because they do not know what they are listening for. How someone talks about their ex tells you almost everything you need to know about whether they have healed from that relationship. Not what they say, how they say IT. The energy behind the words, the patterns in the language, the emotional charge that comes with the story. Let me show you what healed looks like versus what unhealed looks like. When someone has genuinely healed, they can talk about their past relationship with calm, with clarity, with ownership of their part in what went wrong. They do not blame. They do not justify. They do not defend. They just state what happened, like they are describing a movie they watched. There is distance. There is perspective. There is peace. They might say something like this: "We were together for 3 years. We wanted different things. I was not ready to settle." Down she was. We tried to make IT work, but we could not. I learned a lot from that relationship. I see now what I could have done differently. I did. We both moved on. Notice what is in that statement. Clarity about what happened. Ownership of their part. Acceptance of the outcome. Nitrogen monoxide blame. Nitrogen monoxide anger. Nitrogen monoxide unfinished emotional business. That is what healed sounds like. Now let me show you what unhealed sounds like. My ex was crazy. She could not handle me having female friends. She was controlling. She was jealous. She accused me of things I never did. I tried everything. I was patient. I was understanding. But nothing was ever enough for her. In the end, she just could not deal with a confident man. Do you hear the difference? Every sentence is blame. Every sentence is defense. Every sentence is justification. There is nitrogen monoxide ownership. There is nitrogen monoxide self. There is nitrogen monoxide learning. Just a story where they were the victim and the other person was the villain. When someone cannot face the parts of themselves they do not like, they project those parts onto other people. And then they spend their energy fighting those projections instead of doing the inner work to integrate their shadow. Carl Jung paraphrased from the archetypes in the collective unconscious. 1959, here is the test. Listen for 3 things. 1. Do they take any responsibility for what went wrong? Or is every problem blamed on the other person? 2. Can they name specific things they learned about themselves from that relationship? Or do they only talk about what the other person did wrong? 3. Is there still emotional charge when they talk about it? Do they get defensive? Do they get angry? Do they need to justify themselves? Or can they talk about it like IT as ancient history? If they cannot take responsibility, if they learned nothing, if there is still emotional charge, they have not healed. They're still carrying that relationship with them. And IT will show up in your relationship, not as a conscious choice, but as unconscious patterns they do not even see. People who have not healed from one relationship do not just move on. They recreate the same dynamic in the next relationship, and the next, and the next, until they finally do the work to break the cycle. Sigmund Freud, paraphrased from Remembering, Repeating, and Working Through. 1914 to sign number 2, how they handle conflict with you. The second sign shows up early, usually within the first few disagreements. And IT tells you whether someone has done the work to develop healthy conflict resolution skills, or whether they are still operating from unhealed trauma patterns. Here is what you need to understand: how someone learned to handle conflict in their past relationship becomes their default mode for handling conflict in every relationship after, unless they have consciously done the work to change IT. Jordan Peterson talks about this in his work on relationships. He says that one of the most important questions you can ask about a potential partner is this: how do they handle being wrong? How do they handle being called out? How do they handle conflict when their ego is on the line? Because at that moment, that pressure point, is where the unhealed past shows up. That is where you see whether someone has integrated their experiences, or whether they are still reacting from old wounds. Let me show you the difference. Someone who is healed can be told they hurt you without collapsing into defense. They can hear it. They can sit with it. They can say, "I did not realize that. Help me understand how that landed for you." They can own IT. They can apologize without making excuses. They can change their behavior. That is what emotional maturity looks like. But someone who is not healed cannot do that. When you tell them they hurt you, they hear something else. They hear you are bad. They hear you are not enough. They hear the same criticism they heard in their last relationship, and they react. Not to what you actually said, but to the old wound. People do not respond to reality. They respond to their perception of reality. And perception is shaped by the past. Arthur Schopenhauer paraphrased from the world as will and representation. 1818. So, here is the test. Watch what happens the first time you have a disagreement. Watch what happens the first time you express a need they did not meet. Watch what happens the first time you set a boundary they do not like. Do they hear you? Or do they defend themselves? Do they take responsibility? Or do they shift blame? Do they stay present? Or do they shut down? Do they try to understand your perspective? Or do they make IT about their feelings? The answers to those questions tell you everything you need to know about whether this person has done the work or whether they are still operating from unresolved wounds. The best revenge is to not be like the one who hurt you. Healing is not about forgetting the past. Healing is about learning from it and becoming someone different, someone better, someone who does not repeat the same patterns. Marcus Aurelius paraphrased from Meditations, c. 170 AD. In the next segment, I am going to show you sign 3 and sign 4. And these two are even more subtle. But once you see them, once you understand what they reveal, you will never miss them again. Stay with me, because the next two signs are the ones that will save you from wasting months or years on someone who says they are ready, but is actually still healing from the last person who broke them. This is male psyche, and we are going deeper. Sign number 3, how they respond to vulnerability. This sin is the one most men miss completely, because IT hides behind something that looks like connection. IT hides behind intimacy. IT hides behind deep conversations and shared feelings. But underneath, IT reveals whether someone is healed enough to actually let another person in. Here is what you need to understand. Vulnerability is not the same thing as emotional dumping. Vulnerability is not trauma bonding. Vulnerability is not using someone as a therapist. Real vulnerability is the ability to be seen, fully, without defense, without performance, without needing to control how the other person responds. There is a difference between the persona and the true self. The persona is the mask we wear. The true self is what is underneath. Real intimacy only happens when two people can drop the persona and show each other the true self, without fear, without shame. Carl Jung paraphrased from The Development of Personality, 1934. So here's the test. Watch what happens when you are vulnerable with them first, when you share something real. Something that is not polished. Something that reveals a part of you that is uncertain or scared or still figuring things out. Do they hold space for it, or do they make IT about themselves? Do they listen, or do they immediately jump to advice or reassurance, or their own story? Do they let you be human? Or do they need you to stay strong because they are not ready to see you as anything other than the role they need you to play? If they cannot hold space for your vulnerability, they are not healed. Because someone who is healed understands that relationships are built on mutual vulnerability. Not one person performing strength while the other person takes, but two people showing up as they actually are. Now here's the other side of this test. Watch what happens when they are vulnerable with you. Not when they are dumping emotions, but when they are genuinely showing you something real. Do they let you respond naturally, or do they need you to respond in a specific way? Do they trust you with their feelings, or do they immediately retreat and say, never mind, or, I should not have said that? Do they share to create connection, or do they share to get reassurance that they are okay? When someone projects the dynamics of a past relationship onto a new person, when they expect you to behave like the person who hurt them, when they test you over and over to see if you will prove them right or prove them wrong, we call this transference. Sigmund Freud paraphrased from The Dynamics of Transference. 1912, Robert Greene wrote that people who have been hurt deeply develop defensive patterns. Ways of relating that protect them from being hurt again. But those same patterns also prevent them from ever experiencing real intimacy. Because you cannot be both fully protected and fully open. You have to choose. So the question is, has this person chosen to heal and open, or are they still choosing to protect and defend? Sign number 4. How they relate to time and commitment. The 4th sign is the one that takes the longest to see, but it is also the most predictive, because this sign tells you whether someone is actually ready to build a future or whether they are still stuck in patterns from the past. Here is the pattern. Someone who has not healed from their previous relationship has a distorted relationship with time and commitment. They are either too fast or too slow. Either they rush into commitment before they really know you, or they avoid commitment even when everything suggests they should be moving forward. Let me explain both. The too fast version looks like this. They meet you, the chemistry is there, and suddenly they are talking about the future, about moving in together, about meeting family, about long-term plans, and IT feels good. IT feels like finally someone who knows what they want. But here is what is actually happening. They are not committing to you. They're committing to the idea of not being alone anymore. They're committing to the fantasy of a relationship that will heal the wounds from the last one. They are rushing because they are trying to outrun their own pain. People do not flee from pain because pain is unbearable. They flee from pain because they do not believe they can survive it. So they run, they distract, they fill the void with a new person, and they hope that if they move fast enough, the past will not catch up, but it always does. Friedrich Nietzsche, Paranoia. From thus spoke Zarathustra, 1883. The too slow version is just as revealing. This is the person who has been hurt so badly in their past that they have built walls. High walls. Thick walls. Walls designed to keep anyone from getting close enough to hurt them again. They will date you. They will spend time with you. They will even say they care about you, but they will not commit. They will always keep one foot out the door. They will always have a reason why now is not the right time. Some things are within our control and some things are not. You cannot control whether someone else heals. You cannot control whether someone else chooses to trust. You cannot control whether someone else is ready. The only thing you can control is whether you stay in a situation where you are waiting for someone to become available while your life passes by. Epic C. 135 AD. So here's the test. Does this person have a healthy relationship with time and commitment? Do they move at a pace that matches the actual development of the relationship? Or are they either rushing to fill a void or stalling to avoid risk? If they are rushing, they are not healed. They are running. If they are stalling, they are not healed. They are hiding. Both patterns are signs that the past is still controlling the present. And until that changes, no amount of effort on your part will create a real relationship. Closing segment trace. So now you have all four signs. How they talk about their ex, how they handle conflict, how they respond to vulnerability, how they relate to time and commitment. In the final segment, I am going to show you how to apply this framework without becoming paranoid. How to balance healthy caution with genuine openness. How to evaluate without judging. And most importantly, how to protect yourself while still leaving room for a real connection. How to apply this without becoming paranoid. Let me address something important before I show you how to use this framework, because I know what some of you are thinking right now. You are thinking that if you apply these tests, you will never find anyone, that everyone has baggage, that everyone is carrying something from their past, that if you look too closely, you will always find reasons to walk away. And you are right. Everyone does have a past. Everyone has been hurt in some way. Everyone carries wounds. That is not the issue, has never been the issue. The issue is whether someone has done the work to heal those wounds. Whether they have looked at their patterns, whether they have taken responsibility for their part, whether they have integrated their experiences in a way that allows them to show up as a whole person in a new relationship, The goal of life is not to become perfect. The goal is to become whole, to integrate the light and the shadow, to own all the parts of yourself, the good parts and the difficult parts, the healed parts and the parts that are still healing. So when you are evaluating someone, you are not looking for perfection. You are not looking for someone who has never been hurt. You are looking for someone who is actively doing the work. Someone who can look at their patterns and name them. Someone who takes responsibility for their part. Someone who learns. Someone who grows. Here's the nuance most people miss. There are 3 categories of people: healed, healing, and unhealed. And you need to understand the difference because 2 of those categories are datable. 1 is not. Healed is rare. Healed means someone has done a deep sustained inner work. They have processed their trauma. They have integrated their shadow. They understand their patterns. They take full responsibility for their emotional state. If you meet someone like this, do not let them go. Healing is more common. Healing means someone is actively doing their work. They are in therapy. They are reading. They are reflecting. They are learning from their mistakes. They can name their patterns even if they do not have them fully under control yet. Someone who is healing is datable because they are moving in the right direction. Unhealed is the danger zone. Unhealed means someone has not looked at their wounds. They have not processed their past. They are still blaming their ex for everything that went wrong. They repeat the same patterns in every relationship, and they do not see IT. Someone who is unhealed is not dateable. Not because they are bad, but because they are not available. The first and most important freedom a person can have is the freedom to say nitrogen monoxide, to walk away from what does not serve you, to refuse what would harm you. So here are the questions you need to ask yourself as you are getting to know someone. Not questions you ask them directly, but questions you ask yourself as you observe their behavior over time. 1. When they talk about their past relationship, do they take any responsibility? Or is it all blame? 2. When we have a disagreement, do they stay present and try to understand? Or do they get defensive and shut down? 3. When I am vulnerable with them, do they hold space for it? Or do they make IT about themselves? 4. When they are vulnerable with me, is IT to create connection? Or is IT to test whether I will stay or leave? 5. Are they moving at a pace that matches the actual depth of our relationship? Or are they either rushing or stalling? 6. Do they talk about their healing journey? Can they name their patterns? Or do they act like the past has nitrogen monoxide effect on the present? 7. Do their words match their actions? Or is there a gap? 8. When I observe them under stress, do they handle IT with maturity? Or do they fall apart? 9. Do they have healthy boundaries with their ex? Or is there still emotional entanglement? 10. Most importantly, do I feel safe with this person? Or do I feel like I am walking on eggshells trying not to trigger their unhealed wounds? Time reveals all things. The truth cannot hide forever. If you pay attention, people will always show you who they are. The question is whether you are willing to see it. Now let me say something to you directly. If you are watching this video, there is a good chance you have been hurt before. There is a good chance you have given your time and energy to someone who is not ready. And if that is you, I want you to know something. That was not your fault. You did not fail. You met someone who had not done their work yet. A nitrogen monoxide amount of love from you could do that work for them. But here is what you need to do now. You need to make sure that you have done your work, that you are not carrying unhealed wounds into your next relationship, that you are showing up as a whole person, ready to build with another whole person. Because the framework I just gave you works both ways. The 4 signs apply to you too. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who you think you should be, not who others expect you to be, but who you actually are underneath all the performance and all the fear and all the unhealed wounds. Here is the final truth I want to leave you with. You cannot build a healthy relationship with an unhealed person. It does not matter how much you love them. It does not matter how patient you are. If they have not done the work, the relationship will recreate the same patterns that destroyed their last one. So your job is not to save anyone. Your job is to protect your peace, to honor your time, to invest in people who are ready to invest back, and to walk away with compassion and clarity from anyone who is still bleeding from wounds they refuse to heal. The unexamined life is not worth living. Growth requires healing, requires looking inward. Change requires owning your patterns and doing the hard work to break them. The people worth building with are the ones who have done that work, or are actively doing it. Everyone else, no matter how much you care about them, is not ready, and you cannot wait for them to be. If this video gave you something, share IT with one person who needs to hear IT. Drop a comment about which of the 4 signs hit you the hardest. Subscribe for more psychology that goes deeper than anyone else is willing to go. This is Male Psyche. I will see you in the next one.